Good evening for those online. We're just getting ready here to start the meeting. We have a few people showing up. We're gonna wait a few minutes just in case there's some people coming.
Had enough to see information about what time
Oh,
it's gonna be.
you can do any time after, say, like 10-ish,
Okay,
so they've got time to lay their eggs in the morning.
so if somebody else has signed up, do they know that as well?
They should.
Yeah,
Yeah,
usually the Paris people would coordinate when you guys can go together.
Okay, the last time I checked, I was doing it by myself,
Okay.
just half of the.
Oh,
high
half the
school
trail,
part,
okay.
yeah, Like 1 through 17,
Oh,
something like that. And I know that Sandy River is doing the other half, so I know if I have a question.
okay, okay, maybe you'll meet or something.
Well, if I have questions, I know where to go.
Yeah, she's definitely the expert. Sometimes they'll send out if
Yeah.
somebody new wants someone else to
Yeah.
join them.
I
but
think-
Actually, I am new with the Nest Watch program. I did it for years with paper.
Right, right. Yeah, it's nice once you.
Yeah.
It seems like sometimes there's something connection. I don't know, so I know one time there was something going on.
I check beforehand,
I was
see which one.
For the paper along in case I came to a good connection.
Okay, all right,
So,
so,
because I also have 17 houses in my neighborhood,
Wow.
so.
and you do Nest Watch with those?
No, just
Okay.
on paper,
Okay,
because I'm the only one that's doing it, so it doesn't get done every week.
where is that? We're gonna have 17.
Our neighborhood Indian one,
Oh, okay,
so,
there's a lot of land there.
And then Rosemary does the reform part.
Okay,
With somebody else.
okay. Good.
Yeah, there's bird trails all over the place.
Yeah.
yeah, because we ran into an interesting one last summer that found a box, and I'm going, that is a really full nesting box. And so I end up poking around to see why it's so full and find out that we need another nesting box up there, because there is a nest with eggs in it, nest built on top of bluebird eggs in it, nest on top, bluebird. There were 4 buried sets of eggs. So I pulled out the 4 buried ones and dropped it down. I came the next week. That nest was buried with eggs on top, and so I pulled the box from that area, because they were just competing, destroying each other's nests.
Yeah.
So there's more bluebirds in that
But
area.
it's all bluebirds.
Yeah.
I've heard about it.
I know, I've never seen bluebirds do that.
Sparrows.
So,
That's better than wrens.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, wrens can be so.
And who is it that makes it, it's a house wren that does full of sticks.
the 6,
Yeah.
yeah.
And now.
Other bird things. Yeah.
They-
Well, then the
Stuff.
and the punch holes in the egg.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you get like chickadee.
Well, finally they got another chickadee nest to go all the way through, and it had 7 chickadees that were fledged out of this box.
Mm.
And the funny part about it was, I just read about how many caterpillars a chickadee brings to the nest. So I'm going, this is
Oh,
a
yeah,
full
it's
load,
crazy.
so it's about 6,500 to 9,000
Oh.
Mhm.
to feed the young.
Huh.
And that happens
Like
in a
that.
16-day period.
Oh.
16 days for the eggs to hatch, 16 days for the young to fledge.
Mm.
So in 16 days, so that is between 350 to 530 caterpillars a day. Which tells me there's a lot more caterpillars around than I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've never thought they were that many.
Think maybe they did something other than caterpillars.
But apparently it's good protein for the baby, so.
yeah.
Pretty much. Okay. I'm gonna start the meeting.
Yeah.
Should I start? Okay. All right. Good evening. This is the April meeting of the Virginia Native Plant Society, the New River chapter. We start our meetings off with a land acknowledgement. This land where we live was historically Tutelo-Monacan. However, our ancestors who ourselves arrived here in the New River Valley. We're learning a new way of managing the land for biodiversity, which connects us all to who lived on this land and will live on this land. The gift of native habitats that were managed so well for tens of thousands of years by the Tutelo-Monacan people and their ancestors now needs all of us working together to preserve it for future generations. This evening, we have a presentation by Ann Raridan, who I found out last night again is pretty well known around town because of all the different organizations that she works with, including the Master Naturalists. I was at the Lyric last night and I wanted to check out the ad that we're running for our chapter to encourage people to join. And when I'm looking at the ad, I turned around to some people behind me to ask them what they thought of the ad. And they go, which one? I go, the one with all the flowers in it. And they go, oh, that must be Ann's ad. So I said, you mean Ann Raridan? Oh, yes. Because she does all kinds of stuff around town. So I said, well, actually, it's a Native Plant Society that was running this. I just wanted to make sure that it looked visually nice and it was easy to read. And they all agreed that it was, which was good to hear. But tonight's talk is by Ann Raridan, talking about tree rescuers. And we're having a very famous guest, famous around town tonight. So let me start the PowerPoint and see, I gotta figure out how to share the screen. We've got to do that. There we go. And let's see. So to ask, can everybody online see the presentation?
We see the slides, but also the slides on the left.
Oh, okay. So I've got to do, let me stop sharing. This is the one where I get it wrong a lot of times. I've got to share. No, I think I
Share entire screen, that first one. That go up.
Oh.
That whole screen will just show exactly what's on your screen then.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah, we just see the presentation slides now.
Okay, great. I'm gonna move the gallery to the bottom. And I'll turn it over to Ann Raridan.
Might have something on the bottom that people here aren't gonna be able to see.
Yeah, how do I hide that? Does
You
anybody?
should be able to.
Well, I tried to slide it to the bottom and out of the way and it just,
I think
Goes
if,
off on the left. and then
yeah,
one
you
bar.
should be able to go to.
That minus sign is probably what you want.
there we go.
It's still
It's been a long
showing
years
the,
of Zoom.
it's still showing the talking thing, but, okay. Okay, hi, everybody, I'm Ann Raridan, and besides the Master Naturalist, I am also a member of this chapter, and also a member of Sustainable Blacksburg, and Sustainable Blacksburg is a partner with the town on the NRV Tree Rescuers Program. Oops,
That arrow.
okay. This one?
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute.
Sometimes,
PowerPoint. Oh, try it.
this is the thing that happens at the library. Okay, so I know I don't need to tell the native plant people why we care about trees, but obviously mature trees provide more ecosystem services and quality of life benefits than smaller trees. Stormwater management, carbon food and habitat, all of those things. So that is the why. And I'm sure you all also know invasive vines can usually kill the trees in different ways, strangling them, choking them, blocking the light, holding moisture too close to the bark. So I learned first about invasives from the master naturalist. And sometimes you can know too much because then it's very discouraging when you're seeing so much of it. So when the state master naturalist had a webinar about this program in Northern Virginia called Tree Rescuers. And I was very intrigued by that because it's really targeting saving the trees themselves, recognizing we're not getting rid of all of the invasives. And it's an education awareness program for landowners. And because it's very focused, it seemed very doable. And I work through Sustainable Blacksburg very closely with the Office of the Town Sustainability Manager, Carol Davis. And I mentioned this to her, and she had been trying to do some education about English ivy and some of the invasive vines. And so she immediately loved this idea also. And so we partnered together and created this program. And it's very fortunate for me too, because that she was interested because she created a lot of the materials and things that we've used for the program. So as I mentioned, it is a collaboration between her office and Sustainable Blacksburg. And I forgot to put on here, but we kicked this off in February of 2023. I had learned about it, I think, in the fall, and we really wanted to get it going while all of the ivy, especially, was still really visible. So we kind of hurried up to launch it. So our program has the education awareness piece also. We were hearing from a lot of people that they really wanted to do the removal. So we started a third Friday work day, and we've been working in different parks and town lands. We also do work day. We hear from a lot of, especially student groups, who want to get involved. And so we schedule a lot of special work days for them, just because we can't accommodate everybody on our regular work days. And for anybody who is a master naturalist, both going out to homeowners with the flyers and the vine removal are approved for master naturalist service hours. So our program is a little different than the Northern Virginia one because they had, I think, 6 vines, and we decided to focus on the 2 that we most commonly see here, bittersweet and English ivy. And this is one side of the brochure that we give to homeowners. So we would be saying, hey, we saw this, and these vines are potentially killing your trees. So we mapped out a bunch of different sections, and people could sign up to do a particular section. Most people, of course, wanted to do in their own neighborhood. I mean, that's what I did. So people could sign up on our website and pick an area, and we would get the materials to them. So this is the other side of the flyer. So, it has people don't have to put their whole name or anything like that. A lot of people just put like the first name. And if you're volunteering with Master Naturalists or Native Plant Society, you could say, I'm a volunteer with this. There's a place to put an email. We have a Tree Rescuers email, so nobody has to provide their personal email or anything like that. But it provides the basic information of kind of what to do if you have a problem. There's a link to the Blue Ridge Prism. There's also, they can go to our website and get more information. And let me go back here. And like I said, this is the other side of the flyer. So you're kind of telling them, say, hey, I saw this, and how to recognize it, and how to recognize the native vines that you don't necessarily want to mess with, especially the poison ivy. So we have a guide on our website. Part of the package that we give to volunteers has this volunteer field notes form. So you can, as you're walking around, you can take note of, hey, this house has, a vine problem or whatever. And also to note if you left a flyer, if you talk to the homeowner, that kind of thing. So we have where people can log in what action they took while they were out surveying. So what we initially we've had 13 volunteers do some of that kind of work, going around to give people the flyers and talk to them. I didn't think to pull out how many people were actually talked to, but a lot of times, there's nobody home, but you can just leave the flyer for them. So on our sections, we had so many houses and acreage, and we tried to kind of make the sections sort of the same size and kind of, walkable and that kind of thing. So we've covered, as it shows, 643 houses, 318 acres, 497 affected trees, and 115 brochures that we gave out. Now, I did this in my neighborhood, actually. Yeah, here. This is actually a picture in my neighborhood. I live near the Shenandoah Trail, so you can kind of see the trail, and then the ivy is on the side of the trail. And I thought I had a big problem in my neighborhood, and what I discovered was that it was really mostly this one house that has like 25 affected trees. So I know Mary Rhodes had initially asked about this presentation, and one of the things she was asking me is, what kind of response we were getting from homeowners. So it's really been the whole range. I mean, one volunteer told me that they went to their neighbor and explained it to him, and immediately they cleared 5 trees. And I know somebody that I met that I just happened to mention this program to said, oh, we didn't know that these vines were killing our trees until somebody left a flyer on our door. And they were super happy to know. And they had, it sounds like some major vines, anybody who's done this knows that they can be huge. But she said, once we got them cleared, it's, we can keep the tree clear, and it's not that hard to do. So obviously some people took immediate action, some told the volunteers, they're glad to know and interested to take care of it. The response I get at this particular yard was, as a number of other people did too, is that they couldn't do the work themselves. This one lady said, we're in our 80s and we can't do it, and we've been having a hard time getting help to hiring anybody to do a lot of other things. And I also had somebody, this was another response we got more than once, who was kind of, okay, I've got all these other things I want to do in my yard. This is not a priority for me, so I'm, not necessarily going to do it. But at least now they know. I had somebody left a flyer on my door about Bradford pears. I could have saved myself a lot of trouble. So in response to some of what we were hearing about the people who couldn't do it themselves, we put together this kind of supplemental flyer with resources of some of the companies that we know. And actually, sorry, this one, we have a little bit more up-to-date one of these that has 3 local contractors who do the removal. We of course included Blue Ridge Prism again. You can actually rent a rower from the crew team at Virginia Tech for $20 an hour, for whatever kind of work you want to have done. But since that's something they do as a fundraiser, we included that there. And then of course, lots of people use the big event, which of course just happened, and in the fall, the Greeks Giving Back. So, because I had kind of tried to explain to the person I was talking to some of the possibilities, or trying to connect on Nextdoor or something like that, and I didn't have this at the time to say, if you can't do it yourself and you're having trouble, these are some resources that you can use. So obviously what we really want is for people to take action to save their trees. These are pictures in Blacksburg that somebody sent to Carol of a tree that had come down that looks like it's probably due to the ivy. And then behind it, some trees that could potentially still be rescued. So this is kind of the, the advice we're giving to homeowners, look at their property, cut the vines, leave them in the canopy to die back on their own, and leave the native vines. And we didn't initially have a way for people to report their tree rescuers, but we have added that to the rescues. Sorry, we have added that to the website. So if people do take action, they can log that in on our website. This is a little more detailed as far as how to do it. I initially got permission to remove some vines. I took this information to the church that I go to, Blacksburg United Methodist, and we own the property on Harding Avenue where the Interfaith Food Pantry is. And I had noticed a couple of big trees with lots of vines. But the first time I went to try to do this, I had no idea how hard it could be because I have only taken English ivy off the ground. And I had clippers and loppers and a handsaw, and I could cut the vines, but I couldn't get them away from the tree at all. So one of the very key tools in our in our kit now are flathead screwdrivers, just to kind of pry it away from the tree. And a lot of times the vines will just break if you pull it away, but even if you cut it, it doesn't always want to come away from the tree itself. And actually, sorry, that tree there is, you don't have it there. This one here, that tree I was just showing is the base of this tree. So at the base, it really didn't look that bad, but further up, it was definitely had a lot of growth. So, as we know, not everybody in their 80s can be Rosemary Sawden, who can totally still do this work, because this was her at the YMCA's Lancaster House on the edge of Virginia Tech's campus a couple years ago, I think, for the big event. I had noticed just driving by that they had a lot of ivy covered trees, so I inquired, and they said, oh, as a matter of fact, we have some students coming from the big event. And so Rosemarie and I went, and the students were mostly occupied, so Rosemarie and I did most of the work. And there's still a few in the back corner that we haven't gotten to, but they're in a lot better shape than they were. So this is one of the other big trees at the church. I got a before and after picture, so you can see on the left what it looked like before and what it looks like now that it's died back. And one of the things we get from volunteers is concern that because there's still ivy on the ground, it's going to grow back, which it will, but a lot of these vines are so thick. I mean, it's years worth of growth. In fact, one of our work days, there were 2 people working on this one tree the whole time, cutting through layer after layer after layer of vines. And they actually never got all the way through to the trunk of the tree. So it's true, it can grow back, but it's a years-long process for some of them to get to the point that they were at. And so we feel that we are saving this tree and prolonging its life. And I also, somebody told me that English ivy doesn't flower until it's like 5 years old or something like that. So we're also preventing it from and it only flowers when it's growing up. So we're preventing it from flowering and spreading its seeds and reproducing more easily too. So, because the other thing I have to tell volunteers is that even if you realize the tree is already dead, it still helps to remove the vines because it will keep it from flowering. So this was one of our third Friday work days, and you can see what it looked like on the left when we started and what it looks like now. You know, this is the little park at the corner of Washington Street and Draper. There's a few little trees that still have some vines we missed that every time I go by there, I'm thinking, I need to go back there and get those. But anyway, we do feel like we're making progress. There's still a lot to do, but you can see this on the Huckleberry, kind of the before and after. Obviously, the one on the right doesn't have a lot of the other new growth either, but you can see that a lot of the ivy is gone. Lately, we've been working at Wong Park on our third Fridays. There's a lot of poison ivy on the Huckleberry, so we kind of moved from there for a while last summer, I think. And started working at Wong Park and kind of discovered that, I mean, we rediscovered some of the park because it was so overgrown that you couldn't really tell it was there. So there's this nice little path through one of the groves there, and I know Carol is thinking of doing some planting and things like that. In fact, I know she's hoping to connect with some of the native plant people who know more than I do about doing some planting in there too. But we've had a lot of days out there. We've been trying to sort of reclaim the park. There is some ivy there, but a lot of it was just other invasives. I mean, we've also been taking out multiflora rose and knapweed and some other things too, just trying to even get to the trees again. I mean, just, you know, the little forested areas. So as I mentioned, we have done a lot of work days just with groups. So we've had a number of people come for our third Friday work days, but we've also done a lot of separate work days also. We've had a lot of student groups, of course, but also this one picture there on the bottom left is a church group that came out. We've had a number of community members come for the work days, and over 100 volunteers have been out there at least once. And I was really trying hard to keep track of how many trees we were rescuing, because that's one of the things that the Northern Virginia program has. They have this, I forget, it's a lot. Of course, it's a huge area and there's a lot of affected trees, but I can't ever seem to find a good way, especially when we have a lot of people, to kind of try to keep track of how many trees we've rescued. So I'm sure I've worked on more than 100 myself. So anyway, we definitely know we've rescued more, hundreds of trees. And some of these pictures are at the Virginia Tech Turfgrass Center, because we also, the relationship that the master naturalists have with the old growth forest, the arborists extended that to the Turfgrass Center too. So we can go there and do work at the Turfgrass Center, and as master naturalists or students, we don't have to fill out any other paperwork. Community members have to fill out a form, just like they do in the old growth forest, but the rest of us are covered by the Virginia Cooperative Extension or as a student. So a lot of the student groups have come there. So how can you help? And some of these trees around, this is right as I'm coming out of my dentist's office. I think there's a bunch of trees in there, but it's crazy. So we really need some people to actually do the neighborhood surveys. We've sort of stalled out. We had a bunch of people in the beginning. We have had one or two along, but a lot of times the people that sign up on the website, I email them to try to get them the flyers, and then I don't hear back from them. But I do think it makes a difference for people just to know. You can also join us for a work day. I know some people are not able to do the work, but sometimes we really just need some people who know what's going on to help us, because sometimes we get a lot of people coming that we didn't know were coming. And it can be kind of chaotic when there's not enough of us to help direct them to, what we're trying to do. Yes, yes.
Will count as master natural powers too. So.
Right, yes. Brian DeGraff is saying that it still counts as master naturalist hours too. But yes, a lot of times it could just be very helpful to help direct some of the people who haven't done this before, mostly students, but just to kind of help guide them. And I forgot to put that anywhere, but the town has also purchased a lot of tools. So they have like 20 sets of gloves and 20, well, not 20, but we got some hand tools, a bunch of screwdrivers, some loppers, and they also have some root slayers and other things that we haven't used for this, but a lot of tools. So when we do have a big group coming, we usually have enough tools for all of them to do work. So of course you could also help your neighbors. I've been talking to another neighbor about trying to get a group of us to help that couple in our neighborhood who has the problem that they haven't been able to address. Churches, schools, I noticed my daughter's old elementary school recently, there's a lot of trees with English ivy there. The town, you can also give out our flyers at events. I don't know if you'll be willing to do that, but we often publicize your plant sales and different things. And actually, I saw Mary Rhodes at an event, at the one that was the invasive event that was at the Newman Library. And she commented about our flyer because the one for the homeowners is not necessarily that appropriate for events. So we kind of reworked that flyer. So we have something that's kind of more just to give to the general public. So I don't know, you guys, I think no, I'm sorry. I am a member of your chapter, but I'm not always doing all of the same stuff with the chapter, but the Native Plant Society tables at places that
We'll be
like
there.
Sustainable Blacksburg doesn't.
So, yeah.
Right, well, yeah, we'll actually be at that too, but I know I know the Native Plant Society does more than just that what we do, but anyway, if anybody wants to see this. So I don't know if you're familiar, but I mentioned the work with the town, but you can also, as an individual, you can work on town land to remove invasives. And so they developed a memorandum of understanding to remove invasives on town land, and basically just an agreement to, you're only gonna do invasives that are species that are on the Virginia list of invasive species. You're just using manual removal methods, so no chemicals and no power tools or anything like that. You provide your own tools. It says remove what you take out if it impedes the access, but usually you can just put it somewhere where it's out of the way. You're not blocking the Huckleberry Trail or
Do you
whatever.
bag it up at all, or do you consider the bags too wasteful?
I haven't bagged it up. We did bag some stuff at Wong Park, I think, because we were clipping multiflora rose. I mean, we were clipping some seed heads of bittersweet multiflora rose, and so we bagged that, but usually we don't. And I've done work at Heritage Park with the pollinator garden there, and we kind of followed the land trust, kind of tossing stuff off to the side. And so really they just want people to avoid blocking the way for somebody else. And it also says provide informal updates, which I have done a couple of these, and I did not remember that was something I was supposed to be doing. A couple of them I did partly just so initially when we started this, it was set for Carol's schedule because we needed a town person there. And so now I've gone through the process to be able at Wong Park or on the Huckleberry to do it myself, even if she's not there. And also the Master Naturalist, if you can fill it out for yourself as an individual, but as a Master Naturalist, if you wanted to have other people work with you, you have to go a level higher to get their approval for that. So I've also done that too. But I also filled this out for my own neighborhood too, which I haven't started working there yet, but I don't think it's too onerous really, what they're expecting, but that's kind of the basics. So if you don't have tools, this is also another thing actually that the town put together is this invasive vine removal kit that you can check out from Blacksburg Library. So if you just go to the desk and tell them that you want the invasive, I don't remember exactly how it's listed, but basically the invasive vine removal kit. And, you know, you can also check out, backpacks for the parks and things like that. And so it's the same kind of thing. They keep this kind of in the same area, but you can check that out. And it's got the resources and the tools and everything that you see there. Before the town bought the bigger batch of tools, we were actually checking that ourselves, that out ourselves every time we were doing a work day on the Huckleberry. So obviously knowledge is key. That picture on the left I took early on, just when I started to see some of this. And when we started this program, that was one of the main pictures that I had. And I said, well, maybe I shouldn't include that. But Carol encouraged me to. It's actually still on our website, that picture on the left. But I had seen somebody posting about the duck pond not too long ago, and it looked like the ivy was gone. So I did go yesterday and take a picture and see that actually it was earlier today. Anyway, they've obviously, not that it's due to us, but somebody realized this is bad to have the ivy on the trees here, and so they've cut it. You can't really see it too well in that picture, but there's still a little piece at the base of the tree, and it's growing just a little bit, but it's the kind of thing that now that they've gotten rid of most of it, they can just go snip that, and hopefully eventually it'll just die back, but it's not going to be threatening the trees anymore. This is another one that is, it's not a place that we went to ourselves with flyers, but this is right across from the YMCA thrift store where I also volunteer. And I would often meet people in the lobby to give them the flyers, and we'd be talking about the problem, and right over their shoulder, see those trees. And I say, well, as a matter of fact, if you look across the street, you can see it right there. And then one day I noticed that they had cut the vines at the base, and so at least up the tree they've died back.
How long does it take to die back then?
It takes some months, it seems like, for it to really be noticeable, because like some of the work that we did at the turf grass center in the fall, they still look green. I mean, it takes a while before they really turn brown and become noticeable. So that's another thing when we're working, we're trying to leave a big enough gap to be able to see where we've been and where we missed and that sort of thing. Because especially when you have a lot of people who aren't necessarily experienced, and I mean, sometimes it's just hard too. And you can easily miss a vine. But also it's just hard to get them all, and you know, and sometimes there are obstacles and things. So when I have a big group, I usually try to pick a spot that is more accessible and easier for people to get to and kind of see what they're doing and that kind of thing. So there's still some places that I'd really like to have some more experienced volunteers kind of do a sweep of, because we've been along the turf grass center, a big section along the
I was
Huckleberry.
there several years ago. That was like probably 8 or 10 years ago.
I didn't realize the full extent of the turf grass center either, because I thought we were like, well, we did all along the fence with the Huckleberry, and we've done a lot of the interior area. And I was looking at some of the places and I was thinking, oh, we're going to be done soon. And then we went over near the Indigenous Garden, like that corner. I didn't know how far it went in that corner. And we've been working there just recently. There's a lot of trees that need help in there. So it's going to be a while before. And I hadn't been at the other end of the turf grass center either. And there's some down there too. So yeah, sorry, I should have said it.
Is there anything that one has to do with the town in order to have permission to go on town land and do this, or do we just go and do it?
So the question in the room was, what permission from the town, that you need to fill out the MOU with the, sorry, it's a memorandum of understanding. So the other part of the MOU is that you would be indicating where it is you want to work. So, and they request a map. I've used, I think, Google Maps just to make a little map. But like I said, I've filled it out for the Huckleberry Trail, Wong Park, and the Shenandoah Trail near my house. And I heard that somebody had, and it's kind of an adopt a trail program. I heard that somebody had adopted the Deerfield Trail. And I had noticed that the last time I was there, it seemed a lot better, like there weren't as many invasives along the trail. So I don't know who it is, but it seems like they're really doing a good job along there.
And this is Mary Rhodes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a suggestion or a couple. Have you checked out Smithfield to see how things are going out there and if they're doing anything at all? I mean, they have that one initiative where everybody shows up as a volunteer, I think once a week. But I just wondered if you kind of have scouted the property or talked to the person in charge of that effort.
Dave McEwen with Master Naturalist.
Right, yeah, Brenda was saying Dave McEwen with Master Naturalist. I have not been out there.
Well, it just would be interesting, I think. And the other thing is, maybe you put your flyers that they're very good, the ones you've made, and give them to the realtors. So whenever someone buys a new house, they already have the flyers.
That's a good point. You know, my daughter's a student at Virginia Tech, and she was living in the Berryfield condominiums for a couple of years. And in the back of their parking lot, I actually quit parking my car in the back parking lot near her apartment because there's a hill there with all these ivy covered trees, and some of them look like they're already dead. So I tried to go to their office and tell them about this potential problem, but you can probably imagine how far I got
Yeah.
with that.
Well, that's
I
how mine,
still
yeah,
want to try again, but
we have calorie pairs here where I live, but the realtors might be a little more receptive, maybe. Yeah.
maybe
The ones that
we
just
had
the
some,
offices, realtors' offices.
right. We had one of the groups that came out last fall were actually the organizing students of the big event, and they had told us that they were going to try to help us get the word out about it too, because they themselves, you know, got to do the work and see what it was like. But I think they got kind of overwhelmed with just the whole thing in general. So I don't think they were really trying to push that. But, you know, obviously they're out seeing a lot of what's going on.
It
And
would be,
we do always encourage homeowners to use the big event students.
well, yeah, I mean, some of the homeowners are brand new homeowners and they might really like to have that kind of thing around. I don't know.
Right.
Okay, and then I think it would be really interesting if you could give those pamphlets to everybody that works for the town and the people on the town council. Because they could take them all home and be examples for their neighbors.
That sounds like a good suggestion. I think I will let Carol do that. Because I did actually, the homeowner that I talked to in my neighborhood, that one of the trees they said was on town land, and they actually wanted the tree to come down. So they didn't want to rescue that tree. They really wanted the town to take it down. And I don't know, according to them, the town said it wasn't a problem. I don't know.
Well, I think it's important that the people who work for the town realize, you know, have the facts, and because there's so many of them, you know, it would spread the word, I think, a lot better. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good idea. I obviously.
Yeah, tell Carol to do it.
Well, I was going to say she has a lot more clearly working for the town. She has
Yeah,
connections with the town than I do. But yeah, no, those are interesting thoughts. I haven't been like to the Smithfield. I haven't really been looking for more places so much because there's already so much out there. In fact, when you come out of Wong Park, just across the street on the left, there's a huge tree with all this ivy. And somebody pointed out to me that it looks like on the one side where all the ivy is, that it looks stunted too. And I've been trying to find out who owns that. It might be the town. I'm just not sure, but I really want to go rescue that tree. And there's another local church in town too that has a really big affected tree right on Roanoke Street. And I have tried a couple of times to people I know that attend that church to say, hey, can I rescue that tree? Because I go by it all the time. But anyway, I certainly welcome, other ideas. There is a lot to do already.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But I do like your idea of getting the flyers to the town. The church that came out to help us on the Huckleberry, I gave them some flyers that they were taking back to give out to their, have available to their members. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I raised my hand and then I forgot my question immediately. Give me a second. So are you leaving these flyers on the door, or are you encouraging like volunteers to knock and try to communicate directly with the homeowner, or are they contacting you later based off the flyer?
We do usually try to knock on the doors.
Yeah.
I mean, I knocked. Well, actually, the one person in my neighborhood, she was out, and so I just talked to her. But the other person, I knocked on the door and I talked to her and I gave her the information. Most people have tried that. I mean, definitely in the information we got back from the volunteers, a number of them had talked to homeowners, but so often people aren't home.
Yeah, I was just
So-
wondering like what the rate of people answering the door is, but.
Yeah, that's a good question. Sorry, the question was asking about, whether we're just leaving the flyers or trying to knock on the door. Part of the reason I would want to knock on the door is because I don't want to be leaving a flyer and have somebody like come to see what I was doing. But based on the feedback we got, they gave out 115 brochures, and I think there were maybe 15 to 20 kind of recorded conversation with homeowners. So is that less than 20%?
Yeah, and at the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned that the Northern Virginia version, you said there were 6 finds, maybe?
Yes.
I was wondering, what are the 4 that they looked at?
Sorry, somebody was asking about the other vines that the Northern Virginia program was looking at, and I can't remember them off the top of my head. I know there were vines that I am not as familiar with, and
I just wondered, are you seeing other vines around the NRV that aren't those 2 that you think are problems for trees, just when you're surveying informally?
not usually vines. I mean, most of the other things that I see are multiflora rose and garlic mustard and knapweed, and not so much vines. I know there's a little bit of kudzu, and actually when I went to the turf grass center for the first time, I learned that they have a whole hillside of kudzu, which I didn't realize we really had much of here, because I grew up in East Tennessee, where even as a kid, all along the rivers, it was like giant green monsters, just the trees covered in kudzu. So I know that the Turf Grass Center has really been working to get rid of their invasives, because actually I'm not sure we could get to the English ivy if they hadn't cleared a lot of the bittersweet out of the way already. But yeah, I don't know. Has anybody else seen other? I know winter creeper was an issue in the old growth forest.
Japanese honeysuckle.
Oh, yes, right. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, somebody mentioned Japanese honeysuckle. I definitely do see that.
Much here, but Easter, it was big in Richmond. I don't see it here.
I've definitely seen, on the Shenandoah Trail, I definitely have seen honeysuckle, but
And yeah, I have another suggestion, and that's for the summer garden tour. I think they'd be the people at the table for the summer garden tour. You could ask them if you could put the brochures there, because those people are all very interested in lawns and what's good and that sort of thing.
right, that's a good point. You mean the library tour?
Yeah, because I mean, they have so many, at least what, 8 gardens usually, and there's a table at each and they take tickets. So you could ask them to if you could leave brochures there
Right,
for people
right.
to pick up.
That's a good point. While you're mentioning the library summer tour, I'll put in a plug. for a couple of years, we did a sustainable garden tour. And we did 2 or 3 gardens once a month, because we don't have the resources to do the full day library tour. But it was like 2 or 3 hours on a Sunday afternoon, and it was something that Sue Clausen had originally suggested, for those of you who know her. But I haven't been able to find enough gardens to do it. We did it. We didn't do it last year. We did it the 2 years before that, and I haven't been able to find enough gardens to do it again. And often people are saying, well, my yard's not sustainable enough. But we all have these problems we inherited, because they're like, well, I'm still getting rid of invasives. And it's like, yes, aren't a lot of us, but you know, they're still doing good things that people could learn from. But so yes, this could be a good group to potentially have some gardens to showcase for that. And it was free to attendees, and because it was just 2 or 3 hours, it wasn't as big a time commitment for the hosts either.
The Native Plant Society has volunteered to have a table at the library tour at, can't remember his name. He's the one that gave the garden cart and,
Oh.
for the raffle.
Hugh Osmus.
Yes, yes.
Yes, he actually, I didn't know he was gonna be on that.
Yes, he is. So, we invited ourselves, somebody suggested, and we invited ourselves, to have a table at his house. Then at the Master Gardeners, we'll be having a table inside the government building, along with Joanne Houston, who'll be doing the invasive table again. So
Okay.
we are tabling that, so.
Right,
And
okay.
we bought another box, we haven't gotten it yet, of the plant invaders of the this area, the Mid-Atlantic.
Okay. Yeah, Brenda Graff was saying that one of the gardens, that the Native Plant Society is going to have a table at one of the gardens. And actually Hugh is one of the people who had volunteered to host the sustainable garden tour. So I didn't realize he was going to be on the library tour either, but he does have a very nice yard. And she mentioned a couple of other places that the Native Plant Society is going to be tabling too. There's a lot of you probably know that on April 26th, there's a whole invasive species community day with a lot of workshops, and we'll have information about the tree rescuers there. The Native Plant Society is also going to be there. So there's going to be a lot of people there and resources there.
Where is that?
It's at Heritage Park.
And Rising Side of the way across the street.
Right, yeah, I think the workshops are at Heritage Park, right?
Yeah.
And the meet and greet for the organizations is gonna be, I think, like 3 to 6
Yeah.
At Rising Silo.
What's the status of the invasive removal at Heritage Park? Could you kind of?
Sure, Brenda's also asking about the invasive removal that we've been doing at Heritage Park. So Carol Davis again with Rosemary Sodden, the famous Rosemary Sodden, have set up, there's a third Monday invasive removal workday at Heritage Park in the morning. Our third Fridays are 3 to 5 in the afternoon, and the third Mondays. I'm not sure why it ended up both the third weeks, though, honestly. But it's 9 to 11 at Heritage Park, and it's kind of seasonal. You know what we end up working on. We've cut a lot of bittersweet. Last time Carol thought we would be pulling garlic mustard, but it really wasn't out, and so we actually, yeah, we ended up actually picking up there's a lot of landscape cloth that was put down for some earlier tree planting, and all of the flooding had exposed a lot of it. So we spent a lot of time actually picking up all of that to throw it away. And I don't know why anybody thought that landscape cloth was a good idea, because the previous owners put it down in my yard, and all it does is make it harder to remove the weeds that come up through it. But in the fall, we did a lot of cutting seed heads off the bittersweet. So we've done a lot of different things there. And I would imagine probably this month we'll be pulling garlic mustard. There were also, they had found at Heritage Park some sort of rare plants that they had kind of marked off, but it was all just destroyed with the flooding. I mean, you couldn't tell at all where it had been or anything.
We'll probably move on to different areas.
Right, that, you know,
Still in the park.
the town is doing a big project at Heritage Park they were removing invasives, doing a lot of new plantings. They were doing a 2-acre kind of pilot, and then they got some grant funding to do I want to say 10 or 12 more acres. So this first part was kind of an experiment, and they removed a lot of the invasives, but they're trying to avoid using too many chemicals, and so that's why they've been trying to get
Is it gonna
volunteers.
the autumn olive there, I think,
Sorry, Brenda was asking about whether the autumn olive was coming back. It's definitely trying to come back. So that's another thing that we did some of the last time, is where it was just starting to come out, cutting that back, just kind of hoping to kill it off eventually. But I'm not an expert on that, and I have not had experience with autumn olive really too much. In my yard, I've got bittersweet invading and some honeysuckle invading, and it came in with the poison ivy, which makes it really hard to eradicate. And I had the infamous Bradford pear problem, 14 of them, that we didn't know we should have taken out when they were small. So yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with all of these different invasives.
So it looked like in your pictures that most of the problem was English ivy, or is the Asiatic bittersweet a big problem?
Bittersweet is a problem, and sorry, the question was whether the English ivy or the bittersweet was more of a problem. There is, along the huckleberry, there's both, and we have worked on both English ivy and bittersweet. And I know that some of the yards that people saw had some bittersweet problems. I think it's just so much easier to see the English ivy, I think, and that's a lot why we've been working on that a lot, and kind of easier to tame it. Because the bittersweet, you know, even when you cut it, it's still, it can come back
Yeah, and it's
faster than the English
in the
ivy.
ice storm, it toppled huge numbers of trees.
Mhm.
And I mean toppled the tree, they didn't just break branches. There were
Right,
clusters, there's one stretch along one of the trails that took out about a 30-foot stretch of trees, that's a trail, dropped them
right,
because
right,
of the weight of the ice built up on all the lines.
right. Yeah, I know certain places, because I know there's the Price's Fork Trail along there. I know there's a lot of bittersweet along, and I mean, I've seen some of these small trees
Yeah.
just pulled down by
Right.
it, but it's partly accessibility, I mean, visibility of the English ivy, because right now it's so easy to see it. And sometimes accessibility, because like I said, we quit at one point along the huckleberry because of the poison ivy. I mean, I know you can still get it other times, and I have, like,
Yeah.
I've gotten it every season, but of course, when it's leafed out, there's just more surface to get it. But we did remove some bittersweet along the huckleberry too, and some at Wong Park too. I mean, it's definitely there. I think at people's houses, mostly what we see is English ivy.
Yeah, the ivy is mostly in residential areas, and the Asian bittersweet is in the forested areas and along, hedgerows.
Right. Yeah, Rosemary was commenting that the English ivy is more in the residential areas, and the bittersweet is more the forested areas and the hedgerows, and that's a good point. That's a lot of what we've seen.
The third Friday is at Stadium Woods.
No, that is actually
The
No, sorry,
third Friday work
the,
day.
we have a third Friday workday, and that is with the town, so we've been we're working on town land. So lately, we've been at Wong Park, and that's where we'll be this month. And we do have some cadets coming. We have some Society of Women Engineers students coming. We have some community people coming. And we've had cadets and the Society of Women Engineers there before too, although we did back-to-back sessions, and this time they're all coming at the same time. So that is a time when it could be helpful to have some 3 to 5 on Friday afternoon. And I have to say, it can be really satisfying. I mean, sometimes it feels a little discouraging, but when you have this tree that, and you've released all of the vines from it, and you can see the trunk again, I don't know, I find it pretty satisfying. And I feel like it's like the story of the starfish, throwing back in. It's like, you can't save all the starfish, but you can save that one. They can't save all the trees, but you can save those trees you're working on and the ecological services that they provide. I mean, we're all about, also planting trees. We've worked with you all in the Plant Southwest Virginia Natives campaign for years to do the native tree and shrub distribution. And so, we're all about that too. But, clearly these trees are decades old, and all these young trees we're planting, it's going to be a while before they get there. So that's another reason that, I don't know, I find it really gratifying to rescue these big trees. And I had a few of these pictures before, but I did for this, I went out to some of the places where I know we'd worked to take some more after pictures, because I sometimes I do before and after, like right that day, but to see them, where it's all died back and everything, and to see the progress we've made really makes me feel good. And also, because I also, of course, notice all the places we haven't gotten to. It does make you realize that we are making a lot of progress. And actually, just like the old growth forest, I mean, I actually tell a lot of the students that we're working with, because a lot of them were also working in the old growth forest, is that I don't think I ever saw it at its worst, but I've heard a lot of stories, and I did see it when there was a lot more ivy, but it's taken some time, but it's really come back, and they're seeing, native plants come back there. And so I usually kind of say, well, sure, there's still all this ivy on the ground, but as we keep working, we're getting it off the trees first, and then and the turf grass center has more. They'll probably use power equipment to get it off the ground. But the guy there said, the thing that we don't have the resources to do is what you all are doing, is getting it off of the trees, because you can't really get it with something else or power. Although there are a few, actually, I think they're gonna have to take a chainsaw to. So some of the vines, I think, that are beyond our saws and our hand tools, but for the most part, we've been able to do it. So anyway, I think I feel like we're definitely making progress. And actually, one of the things, sorry, we learned about this obviously from the Northern Virginia program, and we reached out to them, and they gave us a lot of advice, and they offered to share their resources, but we didn't have the right software. But anyway, so fortunately, like I said, Carol was able to put together stuff for us. But we also heard sometime last year from some people in Charlottesville, and they had first contacted the Northern Virginia program, but then they learned about us. And so they wanted to know what we were doing, because they felt like their problems were more like our problems than Northern Virginia. And so they asked us a lot of questions, and they were working with some homeowners associations, and they were getting ready, the last time I heard from them, to do some pilot programs there. So, all these things, all of us sharing information, and more of us just knowing about the problem. Because the other thing I talk to the students about is that once they've done that work and they've removed the ivy, I don't think any of them would ever plant it. And when they go and they move in somewhere, if they have those problems, they'll know better than some of us did to take it out, as soon as they can before it gets worse. So I feel like that too, just that many more people knowing, how bad it can be. And really, if you tried to get rid of an inches across English ivy, you would know you don't want it to get to that. So sorry, somebody had another question?
Oh, I just wanted to comment, you mentioned the stadium woods, that we went on a tour with Beth Umbridge led on Sunday, May happens, where all the invasive. It was so neat, yeah, to see all the natives that were growing. They literally came up from where the invasive were.
Right, that's great. Yeah, there's a comment in the room about going on a walk with Beth in the old growth forest and seeing where all the May apples have come up. And I know she's been talking for a while about all of the things coming back there. And so I know early on when they started that, some people were saying, oh, it's not worth doing that. But I also think of it as like my vegetable garden. If I didn't weed it, I wouldn't get vegetables. And so it'd be nice if we thought we could get rid of all the invasives and we wouldn't have to keep at it. But I think of it as we have to keep tending it to have the plants that we really want to have. And I do feel like the old growth forest is a place where you can really see the effect of the work.
Can you put in a plug that, Beth and Fred need someone to help them take over there?
Oh, right. If anybody else wants to jump in too. So yes, Brenda Graff was also reminding me that Fred and Beth are looking for somebody to take over for them and working with all the volunteers in the old growth forest. And I mentioned that to my husband and he said, are you going to try to do that? And I said, not a chance. Those are big shoes to fill. So I'm like, I would not try to do that. Because they're pretty legendary for the work that they've done there. I'd be happy to volunteer sometime for whoever else decides to take it over, but leading that would definitely not be me. Actually, the other reason I really like the English ivy is because I it's easily recognizable. Anybody can do it, right? I do know the bittersweet now, and actually I learned from Beth working in the old growth forest to recognize a bittersweet even when it's really small too. And to know that one of the problems creeping into my yard was that, so I could start trying to tackle the bittersweet. But early on, I didn't really know that plant. I just had never dealt with it before.
Hey, Anne, you have a couple questions in the chat.
Okay.
So one is, why not apply herbicide to the root of the English ivy?
If you were on your own property, I'm sure you could do that. We're not allowed to use any chemicals in any of the work that we're doing on public land. I do know for myself with the Bradford pear problem that I have that it seems impossible to exhaust them. So I have started using herbicide on those because they sprout everywhere too. I mean, the trees are gone, but the roots are still sending up sprouts everywhere. So I do use the very targeted cut and paint on those. And I'm actually using some herbicide that somebody else I knew was going to take to the hazardous waste drop off. And it really doesn't, there wasn't a lot there, and it doesn't really take a lot, but yeah, I think I don't have any experience on my own land working with English ivy. I would think that you could do something similar to that, but we're just not allowed to do that.
Okay.
And you can get, well, some of the places you can pretty thoroughly get rid of it. Like actually working at the church, because they're doing all this maintenance anyway, there was hardly anything visible at the base of the tree. So once I cut the vines, you really couldn't, I mean, you can't see much growth there. Some of the places that we're working, it's so thick, and we're trying to clear some space around it to make it harder to grow back, but sometimes it's really hard, and sometimes it's hard to even find it, to cut it down near the ground. In fact, Rosemary and I, when we were at the Y, we tried to grab some of these students to pull this big chunk that was, of all the roots and everything that were next to the tree, because we were having trouble, but even these big students were having trouble too. So we ended up just cutting what we could at the base. It can grow back, but it does take a while still to be much of a problem. Because once you've gotten the worst of it, you can clear the smaller ones fairly easily.
Okay. And the second question is, Carol asked, are you sure that poison ivy doesn't kill trees? I know of a large one that is very dead and the poison ivy on it is the biggest I've ever seen.
That's a good question. Maybe that's a better question for some of the other native plant people. What I've always heard was that the native plant, I mean, the native vines, because they evolved with the trees, the native trees at least, that they don't actually kill them. I have seen some very large vines in my neighborhood that are not bittersweet and right now don't have their leaves, but they're not twisting around like the bittersweet does when it strangles, and they're clearly not English ivy, and they're big. And the trees, there are some big vines, but it just doesn't seem to affect them the same way. Oh, yeah, maybe it could be grapevine. I know there's some big poison ivy around there too, but
Harry.
Hairy, brown, these brown, hairy looking.
yeah, is it all, I don't know, they're saying poison ivy is hairy. I don't know if poison ivy is always hairy, and a lot of people ask about the hairy vines. The English ivy has very hairy vines too, and so, you know, people will be like, oh no, this is poison ivy, and it's like, actually that's English ivy, because usually you can look and you can see some little leaves coming out of it. But I had no idea, again, before I started doing this, that English ivy vines are so hairy.
Very large poison ivy vines go down to McCoy Falls, the big falls down there, and you will see vines inches across, many of them, 4 and 5 inches across, these vines at the road level.
Yeah, I know there's one section near my house that has some very big, I'm sure they're not 4 or 5 inches across like Bob was saying, but they're pretty big. I don't know when or if I'll ever tackle that area, because I'm very, very allergic to poison ivy. But I mean, the other thing is that we don't want our volunteers trying to remove poison ivy either, because we don't want them to get poison ivy. We also, Carol and I went to Master Naturalists host in Charlottesville, a park stewards program, which is another Northern Virginia program that they were letting people know about. But we're actually using some poison ivy wipes that they recommended to us and providing those to our volunteers too. Because I had done a lot of this work and not gotten poison ivy until the day that I told somebody that I'd been doing all this and not gotten poison ivy. And it was last fall, so I didn't get it very far, but I had it all over my forearms. So I just tell people, if they suspect it, if they see it, whatever, just stay away from it. The last time we were out at the Turf Grass Center, there was a yellow jacket near them, and I don't know if there was a nest there or not, but I was like, just move on, because there's plenty to do. It's like, if there's something you're not comfortable with, we'll just go somewhere else, because it's not like we're gonna get it all done anyway.
If you know you have been in contact with poison ivy, you need to use a dish detergent to wash.
I've tried that. I have.
You gotta get quick.
Yes, I have.
That's relative too.
Right, we're talking about poison ivy solutions here. I have tried Dawn dish detergent, Tech New, Zanfel, which is actually the thing that works best for me. I like these wipes because I can do it like right then.
Yeah.
Because Rosemary, a bunch of us were working at the Seeds Nature Center, mostly weeding and things like that. And I was trying really hard to stay away from the poison ivy, but then I helped carry everything to the back. And I was the first one to leave. And I was like, okay, I have to go because I'm gonna get poison ivy, and you know, I can come back some other time. And I went right home and I did all these things, and I'm just covered in poison ivy. And I think we were wearing masks, and I was really glad for a while during COVID with the masks, because I had poison ivy all over my face, and it was terrible. So
One plant we didn't talk about that's invasive is autumn olive.
right, yeah, Rosemary's asking about autumn olive. Our program is really focused on the vines and saving the trees. And like I said, I don't really have any experience working with autumn olive. So
So you're not doing it in Long Park, cause I haven't volunteered. I would think there's a lot there.
I haven't personally noticed a lot there. I mean, well, we've at Wong Park, we started with some certain areas and we've been trying to tackle those, and we've done English ivy and some multiflora rose, and one day last fall, there was a lot of knapweed around the edges. I mean, on the edges of where they'd mowed, like before you got into the forested areas, there was a lot of knapweed. And so we actually had students, and again, Carol is directing most of that, but had students taking topping off the knapweed, and we were bagging that and take it away. I don't really remember seeing a lot of autumn olive there, but we haven't gotten that far into the park, really. We've been working in this one grove, and then we've worked on some areas near the little gazebo where we've gotten some of the English ivy. And again, even when you work there, you go back later and you're looking and it's like, oh, there's some more there, and there's probably a vine hiding. Somebody contacted us about a vine in their yard that they wanted somebody to take a look at. So I went there, and on one trunk of this big tree, sure enough, there's all this English ivy, but the vine comes down and then it totally disappears. It under the bark. I mean, the tree has like grown over it, so you cannot even see where it goes into the ground. So I cut it up high, and I did go by there recently to see that it had all died back, but it's tough. But there's probably autumn olive there when we get further into the park, but bittersweet, we've done bittersweet too, but because really so much of that park had just gotten really overgrown. So it's a process, to kind of try to reclaim it. So anybody else? Maybe I can't see the chat here, so does anybody else online have a question? I don't even know what time it is. It looks like it's getting late. Oh, goodness. I didn't realize it was that late. I'm sorry. Okay, well, thank you all. It's
Thank you.
always enjoyable to. It's always great to talk to kindred spirits. And honestly, sorry, the clock in here is no help at all to me. So it says it's 3:15, so.
That was a very good presentation. Let's see if I can. So I'd like to thank Ann for a really good presentation. That was full of a lot of information. We had a very good hike this weekend. We went down to see the bluebells in Elliston. A total of 9 people went, and between Beth and Mary Rhodes, we were able to find quite a few plants and identify them on the trip. And Bruce Grimes was there to help us with identifying all the butterflies that were out there. That was pretty nice. We had, besides the bluebells, we had identified a lot of types of violets, and the pawpaws were in bloom down there, and quite a few other plants. So I know one thing that's a question mark when we're going to do it. I know in my neighborhood, we have apparently a pretty interesting site with shooting stars. There are 2 big patches of them. And so I've been going down there and checking on their progress. They're not going to bloom right away, but hopefully by the end of the month, and we'll schedule a trip to go down there when they're in bloom. And please check Lauren's email with the schedule of events.
This Sunday it's gonna be at Wildwood Park at 2.
Right, there is a trip this Sunday at Wildwood Park, and all the trips that we'll have are listed in Lauren's email that she put out for the monthly events. So be sure to keep looking and make sure that you're joining these trips. They are very good. Brenda.
any chapter meetings on vernal pools.
Okay, the presentation, right, so there's gonna be the next month, our presentation will be on vernal pools, which should be a pretty interesting, presentation. So, does anybody online have any comments to make? Or events they want to mention? I guess not. Okay, great. This is a very interesting meeting. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Have a good evening.
So is the vernal pool